control MK Project Monarch.
Sorry, it's okay.
The creation of programmable generated life forms, a crude form of cybernetic creature, which if you're going to create these kind of things, you need something to make sure you can control them. That was one of the primary issues with making these cyborg robots. Barry King explained that Barry King was basically a security officer in the Peasmore base for a period of time, according to his claims. And what we've been basically in summary discussing or talking about or looking at under this series, which I've called the Basis Series for the Researcher, is, what the hell is he talking about? Is this true? The basic format of the Basis Series is that often, this is the only time you get anybody speaking on that subject. It could be years later. They don't speak on the radio, they don't get interviewed for anybody else. I've managed to get these interviews, and so they run sometimes for like 4 hours or maybe 2 or 3 hours. Sarah Steiner, for instance, prepared 13 blogs for me to put out based on the interview that she was going to have with me. Barry King has only given about 2 or 3 interviews, and one of them was with Matthew Williams and a guy called, I think, Steve Conway or Convifora. And the idea then was to try and challenge him on all this. Well, the validity of Barry King's basic material seems to be true based on what's actually happening, the actual evidence. The evidence about Barry King and James Casbolt and all that sort of stuff is the actual physical things happening in society. They're now switching on, excuse me, in the last two weeks there has been a mass program to implement light-emitting diode street lighting. Now, one of the other colleagues in my background is a brilliant guy called Winston Keach. Just so coincidence that his father met my sister's brother-in-law when he got drunk one night in Yorkshire and ended up in his place for a few drinks. And then later on, his son marries my sister. It's, I don't know. And there's a major link to the Conservative Party there. Anyway, these things you want to... Yeah, listen, they are not... I've got to get this right. I'm not paranoid because they are out to get me, okay? Yeah. So the point is, there's a lot of little coincidences here. Another little family coincidence is I went out with a lovely lady called Alice. Only works for the English. From Palm Springs, and she a long time ago went out with a guy called John Lear. Okay, I get John Lear's phone number, and I pick up the phone John Lear. He's driving the car. He says, "Hey, Miles!" Hey, he stops the car and has a really close chat with me. Why me? I don't know. The reason why I'm saying that subsequently, that's what happened at the Super Soldiers Summit, is that there's been a couple of allegations made that I, along with everybody else who got some importance at the Super Soldiers Summit, except Kerry Cassidy. I don't think you were abducted, were you? Anyway. No. We were all taken in an interdimensional time loop, by the way. None of these things happen straight off. It's an interdimensional time loop, right? By the alien secret government, right? And we were all taken to Area 51. The update I've done with James Casbolt, Michael Prince, is that he was taken in his Nazi German persona. This keeps on coming all the time. This is all happening in Switzerland. You've got to look at... I was doing some jokes there, but a lot of this is at right angles. A lot of this kind of logic is at right angles. You see this, that bounces down to that, and that switches to that, and so on. Now, the reason why I say that is because there's a lady who just contacted me from the south coast of England, and she's got a phone call from the Evening Standard about aliens and spacecraft lying around. Now, the point about this is it's the 007 trigger that James Casbolt gave in the pictures in the car that a Morris Minor car where he was, by the way, shot in the head with the interdimensional time-traveling bullet, because it didn't leave any scar, because James Casbolt is a super soldier and bullets bounce off him, leaving no form of thing. But there is the car with the broken window, but he was traveling to meet the Chinese who were going to be given certain documents about certain things, which reflected to a landing in a Canadian base where he walked out of a spacecraft with his parents, the interdimensional time-traveling parents. Now this is going out everywhere, left, right, up and down. But that triggered a woman on the south coast of England who's taking lots of high-definition video of UFOs and stuff on the south coast right now. And it turns out that she's called Eve and the next road is Standard, and it affects her next door neighbour who's in front of her. So the point about James Casbolt is he isn't what he says he is what he seems, and he isn't what he isn't. But he is what he says he isn't. Now the point about this is he's a trigger. He seems to be used as a triggering mechanism. So this is why none of this is quite what it seems. You've got to look at it very carefully and look at it round each way and round up and down. Because it will make sense to somebody. If it doesn't make sense to you, they don't care. And that's what was very important about the Channel 4 program. And this is what's called, that's the MASH Project Channel 4 program, which went to air. The last time I was here was just the day before that. My formal opinion on the MASH Project Channel 4 program, the Life and Confessions of an Alien Abductee, was it was a very well done program, but it wasn't for your demographic. Very, very cleverly put together. And it triggered the teenage population, the teenage boy population, because you're not the generation, you're the generation who do something about this. They don't care about you, they're looking at the next generation, the kids. And that's what Kathy Morgan, her grandchild, came to her about a thing in British schools, English schools, called the Alien Pod Program, where there are fake alien landing pods, which have landed from outer space, in the schoolyard or the playing fields of schools in England. These are fake, right? But the children are told, because a policeman come along to school saying we've had a landing of an alien pod in the playground, everybody stand back, and there's dry ice and there's all sorts of things. And the police all make everybody, and we don't know if they're actually police, they're probably psyops. And then two scientists in police chemical suits come in and they make it safe. They make the school playground safe. And then they bring all the children, teachers come and bring all the children, and they have a look at the alien pod that's crash landed from outer space in their school. These are little primary school children, they're 8 or 9 years old. And then they're told, don't tell your parents about this. Right? Now this has been in the newspapers, it isn't secret. Okay? Best way to hold a secret is, the best way to keep a secret is put it in the newspapers. Right? Because then nobody will have been in the newspapers, I saw that the other day. But that's why the Channel 4 program involving the MASH project, which to most people was a complete disaster of a program. But it was highly successful in a certain demographic, the teenage kids, because I had 4 or 5 of them come up from the local school, come up and have a discussion about this whole thing. So what I am postulating is that they are programming the existing waking up generation, those who've woken up, those who have been drugged out with Ritalin, for a secondary message. And I'm submitting that Joanne Summerscales was complicit in part of that programming. Right. One of the things we're talking about here is implementation. This is implementation, mind control through media. As I say, I was met by a man from BBC who was used to be in the board of directors of the BBC, and his task was to deal with mind control in the BBC, and his time period was when John Burke was the Director General of the BBC. So this was a clear alarm bell that the BBC is involved with mind control. Now, that should be no big a deal, but it's very crucial in the way that the BBC implemented popular music in this country after they shut down the free commercial radio stations in 1967. And to anybody outside the UK, That doesn't mean anything, because why should a lot of ships, pirate radio ships, suddenly evolve into England and English culture in the 1960s, and then the BBC shut it down? And why the BBC did not use FM radio for a long, long time with popular music in this country, but FM radio in the States was used. Now there are some indications that the FM radio frequencies are mined window frequencies, and they were using FM radio as a mechanism of direct mine access in those days. But in the UK, you did not have any meaningful popular music entertainment on FM radio. This is a thing which we did with pirate radio stations. We were the first in Ireland to produce these high energy FM signals, and we got away with it. And then I was asked to put it on again, and the guy who put it on was abducted 4 times. MI6 kept a pirate radio station that I ran on the air, on the Irish border, producing pop music to teenagers. Again, the teenage demographics being targeted here. Now, we had a vague idea this was going on, so me and my other colleague, who was aware of a lot of things going on, we took countermeasures to this. And this is where we're now talking about the arrival of the black goo, pirate radio broadcasters circumventing the mind control, which is why they don't want it. And this is a still from the good ship Radio Caroline. This is the tower that they built. This is a 360-foot tower. So in the UK, which is a free, wonderful place, if you want to listen to free thought and album music and loving awareness, you've got to get a damn ship and do it out in the North Sea. Something wrong here. Again, that was only an AM. Something we noticed in the 1970s and 80s with the massive UFO wave in Ireland, which was a wake-up call for a wake-up of energy consciousness in Ireland. There's a brilliant film that's been produced by the BBC called Good Vibrations. It's about a brilliant man in Belfast called Terry Hooley. And Terry Hooley used to transmit out of my bedroom in Belfast while I was in the BBC. And he did reggae music all across Belfast. And, well, I mean, I'm working with the BBC. I can't be seen anywhere near a pirate radio station. So I had to go to the BBC club and be seen. So every time I was in the BBC club, I was actually transmitting out of my bedroom all over Belfast. And the point about this is where we encountered a thing called an intelligence transfer sequencer. This is something within the consciousness which triggered a wake-up, gave you all the facilities, it gave you all the facilities and intelligence, but not the ideas. You had to come up with the ideas. Because based on Terry Hooley's book, which I got more paragraphs in than John Lennon, by the way. I'm in there. Miles Johnson of the BBC, going around the country setting up pirate radio stations. That's not the kind of phrase you want to go public when you're in the BBC. Anyway, that's a long time ago. The point is that there was an awareness, consciousness rising happening in the north of the island of Ireland in the late 1960s. They needed to shut it down. They brought in the Troubles, and the rest is history. What subsequently happened was it started to re-emerge in Dublin after a UFO wave, and this thing here was involved, and these guys and that radio ship and all across those stations were switching people on in the late 1960s and 70s. And when we did the final border blaster with Energy 106, that is when we had these scuttlers turn up. Black intelligent energy. And this is James Casbolt, Sieg Heil. This is my colleague, abducted 4 times, sitting on the radio tower on the Irish border, Sieg Heil. So he was programmed to ask me to put the radio station on. So we have a connection here. There's too many little alarm bells ringing. This is Irish. This is actually in north of Ireland. This is how close we were at the border. And this area is close to an area called St. Patrick's Chairn Well, and the reason why it's called St. Patrick's Chairn Well is because when the Church of Rome came to take away the ancient Celtic church of so-called Christian pagan church in Ireland all those hundreds of years ago, anything that Patrick or his army couldn't deal with, he came, well, this is St. Patrick's. That was a portal just down the hill, a portal where he ended up walking into ETs or other beings. And the reason why the pirate station was called Energy was because of the energy, this wonderful energy. So there's a direct connection there with pirate radio, the Nazis, James Campbell, the Irish border, consciousness, the manipulation of whole populations, all in one go. These are some of the transmitters which, as the engineer, to keep these things on the air, I first noticed a black fluidic energy. Anything we got from the BBC transmitters, which we've got second user. This is one particular transmitter which was actually originally a pirate radio transmitter but spent a lot of time on a BBC transmitter site. The guy who got the license to operate this transmitter, subsequently, I won't mention his station name, but he was also an abductee. So he's an abductee. He launches a pirate station in Londonderry, or Derry, and he gets directly, he's running a pirate station without a license, and he is given a license subsequently, immediately after that. This transmitter is actually used for his radio license, for his licensed station, and is used on the BBC transmitter site, and is absolutely full of this black etheric energy. It looks, my quote at the time was, it looked as if it had been dipped in crude oil. Now I didn't know how significant that was being until really, as we are dealing with it, live at the time. Because this transmitter here, it's a big, fucking huge thing, huge transmitter it was. Anyway, the point is when you took the side off, because there was a fault or problems, that's when you see a big fat spider thing, bigger than my hand, crawling like a crab out of the way. And it turns out, thanks to discussing this with other people, that this is, that's my tower that we did way back in 1987. Basically, build the tower as high as you can get and stick as many aerials on it. You don't have a license, just light it up until the cables start melting. And that was good fun. But that is when we felt that our transmission equipment was being attacked by these things. Because we had a situation where a wire, electricity wouldn't blow down a simple wire to energize a control circuit. These things were intelligent. There's something actually attacking our system. Then we realized there was an intelligence behind this, and it involved fluidic energy systems. And if we deal with Dave Marrow and the creature that was in his back, it's like a large thing with lots of legs, and it was fluidic, semi-physical, and was very, very similar to the creature which Mike Oram talks about, which he had extracted. And then we deal with another guy who comes along called Alistair, who claims to be the son of a man from MI6, and he was infected with this black goo in his flat in Earl's Court in London, because it came out of a sewage system in gaseous form. Now he saw a creature coming up to him, and he was able to get rid of it, but it looked very, very similar to the creature which came out of Mike Oram. And we are then also dealing with these black shadow people. And anybody involved with the people who actually make crop circles, there have been a few photographs of them this season, where black shadow entities are involved with people making crop circles. But then anybody who studies the Philadelphia experiment stuff, the Montauk Project, is that they've had that kind of shadow entity involved there. So exactly what these things are and what they deal with, we're not sure. Wayne Keach has photographed balls of light or energy which sort of pixelate and then materialize into 7-foot tall or taller black shadow entities, and then the guys who are going to make the crop circles go over and talk to them. So this brings us to this thing called the black goo. Now, it turns out careless talk from some squaddies who were in the Falklands information managed to get to Michael Griffin and David Griffin, Jesus. And this was the first indication that one of the spoils of war in this was some kind of alien technology involving blue-grey type entities in an island called Thule Island, south of the Falklands, or Georgia Island, not too sure the exact location. And they were dealing with an oil that responded to electricity. And the point about this is, if you've got an oil which responds to electricity, wow, you could actually then use oil in electrical circuits, and you don't have electrical circuits, but you have extremely powerful cyborg-type circuits. You could actually put this in the blood or the veins of cyborgs, and you have things which are immensely powerful. The oil itself can respond to electrical signals. I've spoken to a Russian businessman in the last day or two, and he says it wasn't Nottingham that oil was taken to, but Mrs. Thatcher got it taken to labs in Holland. And the scientists in the 1980s, these scientists all went through self-termination. Very, very, very nasty self-termination ways. The Iranians are finding that large quantities of their oil won't refine. It's just black, and it's there, and they can't do anything with it. So what they're doing is they're dumping it. This particular person I spoke to has been brought to one of the lakes where this stuff is, and the thing is, one of the things they've noticed about it is these lakes move, and so what's happened is that this stuff came out of the lake towards him and surrounded him completely, but it wouldn't touch him. And it started to communicate with him, and in a nutshell, it explained to him that it is here to clean up our mess. This consciousness is not happy with what we are doing. And he put his finger in it, and normally if you put your finger in oil, it's sticky, it sticks to it. This stuff wouldn't touch him. Took his finger out perfectly clean. But it did tell him that it will defend itself. And this is what happened when those Marconi scientists started probing this oil. It just basically told them to back away off. One of the other problems was that the oil was in a relatively safe condition in the Antarctic, very, very cold. When he brought it to here, it started to mobilize, it was much faster because of the energy. Now, the thing is that Alistair, who's contaminated by this thing, when I was talking to him, I got a very strong feeling I was talking to it like a childlike intelligence. It was really keen to learn. This stuff really wants to understand highly complex things. It wants complex designs. It's fascinated by all this stuff. When Marconi started to give it to make British super soldiers, the super soldiers didn't go mad wanting to kill people. They became more sentient. They wanted to understand what was going on, what was the culture involved, so they dropped it. An analysis of the black goo is nothing more than a vehicle to transport human interests in the dark side of creation. It is embodied by the force of thoughts and would decrease its manifestation when everybody simultaneously would stop thinking about it. So perhaps me talking about it is a good thing or a bad thing. The origin is extraterrestrial and up till now beyond human comprehension. As John Lear told me when I met him after the Super Soldier conference, apart from the octiform life forms that his granddaughters encountered on the moon when we were abducted, that's another story. Big things with 4 legs down his side. He explained, he said, Miles, the one thing we want to know about is the black goo. That's a very bad accent of John Lear. Don't smoke enough cigars. So that this doesn't mean it is a destructive force, it is what you want it to be. So relax on the issue and it will show its true face, service to mankind. Now, one of the other people I interviewed at the Super Soldier was a lovely girl called Sarah. I think I called her a different name, and then we ended up calling her a real name. She claims that she was actually injected with this material, and when it was all over her, just like in the X-Files, going through her systems, and it was a horrendous experience. And she claims that when she connected with Source, with the Source creation, it left her immediately. When you speak about it, it enforces the strength of it. Being a mediator between the speaker and the information that needs to come through to the speaker and his or her peer group. So that's you guys. Be aware of the information you're willing to receive. Keep your ears open and become a real transformer by tuning into the energies involved. You are the creator, you think, and therefore you create. The guru is your assistant, and that's about it for now. This is crucial. Whatever is manipulating us, this black goo, is here to help, in my opinion. The problem is if you're hostile, toxic, and you're going to damage life on Earth, it will not assist you, it will take you out. Because I am very, very convinced we have a completely new player in the game here in terms of us, the aliens, and everything else. Okay, very quickly, a black shadow, a scuttler is a black shadow, multi-legged spider crab type thing. A spotty black hairy appearance, moves like a crab sideways, kind of attached to the back of the neck or head. One of the individuals in the British intelligence that I spoke to, another guy who was dealing with the intelligence side of things in Ireland, is these jellyfish type creatures which attach to the left hand side. And go up into the ear, causing problems in the back of the neck. One crop circle investigator, a very nice girl, has had very serious neck issues. A lot of this was happening at Skye. Tendrilic type creatures with lots of legs. But we don't know whether that's collective consciousness that's being manipulated here or some kind of jinn. But these things are bad news. A colleague of mine whose son was abducted at Boscombe Down, because these things seem to be in those bases down there, had a back issue, left ear problems. It's common. Something's going on there. That's the huge octopus type things. This is to do with the crop circles. The crop circle devices are psyops in many respects, something to do with your perception. And a lot of this is happening near those crop circles. Peasmore, the Peasmore base, RAF Welford, Boscombe Down. One of these things which Cas Bolt referred to, one of the interviews, is a place called Cloud's House in Wiltshire, extreme west of Wiltshire, where he claims that drug addicts are taken in there for rehabilitation. There's maybe some kind of underground facility involving ETs, and these people are then swapped out into the population in human bodies. Now there's aliens in human bodies are being basically processed through that, and the original people are out the door. And this is one of the things which John Irwin is referring to. I'll not play that with Alara, because Alara basically is, well, I'll give you a very quick. I've interviewed Alara because she's one of the few people I've got on camera who actually knows about the sculptures. And we'll see if we can play this.
Running? Okay, scuttlers.
They're mechanical astral constructs that move. They're very mechanical based, and they can actually affect electrical devices.
Yeah, that's why I've seen them.
Here on this realm, because they can interfere with the electrical pulse and things like that.
What are they? Who made them?
I have no idea. I just see them. I see them, and I usually try to get rid of them. They're in my
What are they like? I mean, mine would sort of be sort of.
They look like crabs, mixed from crabs and spiders. They
Yes.
have multiple legs, and they shift sideways. And
That's why the crab. That's the crab side. You get it?
Okay, this is the point about what I mentioned earlier about crabs and spiders. That doesn't make them bad, it just means that they've got lots of legs, but we've got something involved in these domains which we've got to deal with. This was an interview I did with Matthew Williams, but I'm not going to play that. He is a circle maker, and the circle makers have, they're out there making crop circles, and then two shadow entities come. So they're dealing with us. And then we have Alara again. Alara's one of the super soldiers. Now the point about Alara is, since the BBC programme on Uri Geller, where it's stating Uri Geller was definitely used in black ops, psychic warfare, and you've got the NSA, CIA, and everybody else there basically saying this is real. This is the first time the programme's gone out in British television, or world television, I believe, where basically they are validating warfare in the psychic domain. Now the thing was I had earlier there was a thing called causal system robots, or causal system engines. These are mathematical constructs you can manufacture. It's in the physics. Tom Bearden has talked about this. where you can manufacture in the so-called subspace domain these types of devices which affect consciousness. They rely on our perception. They rely on us. That's what the black goo was referring to. They rely on us to create the reality around us. And if they can manipulate our reality, they can get us to engineer our own existence for somebody else's. Basically, this is fundamentally a war on consciousness. They're using the electrical supply system, grid systems. That's why they don't like people off grid. Everything has to be connected to a central system of some kind. They're using these electrical power systems. They're using the computer-based systems. And as I just mentioned earlier, they're installing light-emitting diode street lighting, which now means they can optically transmit high-frequency optical transmitted waves directly into your mind optically. Win Keach is absolutely on top of this. That doesn't mean the existing lighting is being used to do that, but it means they're installing a system using LED lights where they can flash program optical commands directly into the brain across whole streets. And they're at least setting up a system where they'd be able to do that. So they use the electrical supply system to transmit high-frequency data directly into the mind. I mean, people can plug these devices into your electrical domestic supply and use the house wiring to transmit very high-frequency data rates for your internet, which means the electrical supply system is full of high-frequency data, and it can be directly mimicking brainwave information. As I mentioned, I used to be with the MASH project from January 2011 to 2013. We got broken up very acrimoniously. I believe the witnesses have been very badly damaged during the course of those 2.5 years. The one thing that this person does not care about are the witnesses. She cares about herself and the mechanism of the MASH project. I cannot advise more strongly that witnesses should not make contact with this person. It is a dangerous situation there, and I'll not say any more further than that. An example of this is, it started with 4 people, still got 1 person, but we had an awful lot of very good people there. It was very, very good. This is taken at the wonderful Linda's place. It was a wonderful time. And she's a nice girl, very nice things. These are 2 of the primary witnesses who suffered really seriously at the Channel 4 program. This is the wonderful Chantel with that great hairstyle. She got so many proposals of marriage, she couldn't give a damn. She's fine, she's happy. Good to see Fred Lloyd, and let's hope Lloyd, with his cancer, gets on with this and heals. This gentleman here is little known. He's called John Shelton. And he's a Ministry of Defense remote viewer. He remote viewed for the Ministry of Defense. But there's a network of individuals involving the health service, because one of the things which happened at the end of World War II is that the Americans and the Russians got the rocket scientists, the British got the sci-fi law, the people, the medical law. And he's basically explaining that if you are able to communicate off-planet in any way whatsoever, you constitute a danger to these people. They will track you down and they will dismember you or kill you, or in his case, prevent you from reproduction. They're targeting certain blood groups. They're targeting the indigo children, the new children, any of these children who can telepath. That was what happened. That was the primary target with the first Amash witness. Was Amy Miller. In her own words, Joanne's primary target was her daughter. Her daughter had certain qualities, and she was a target because she had these telepathic abilities, and her name, and she did a whole very detailed email about this. And that was the first victim of the MASH project. Dangerous. Marie Kayali, the day before the Channel 4 program, sent this MRI scan. She has about 30 of these of her skull. Kayali up there, Marie Kayali, patient, the 28th. Well, that's the time, I think. I don't know what that is. The date is the 5th of or 11th of 05, 2010, right? This is section 16. And on her eye, just see up there, dark object. It's an eye implant. Now she has suffered terribly. We proved, or we got very good indications that at the UFO Congress, this indicated using his instrumentation that she has about 8 implants in her head, and these radiate signals. I was able to individually detect signals with my metering. That's to say, there's 2 types of radio wave. There's a Hertzian wave, which is an electromagnetic wave which behaves like light and will obey the inverse square law. That's a radio wave that you use for normal radio and TV. That's because it's got an electrical component and it's got a B field, or magnetic component. She was radiating high frequency signals in the B field, that's a magnetic field, on high frequency and low frequency components in the electric scalar field. B fields, scalar waves aren't limited by the speed of light. They're transtemporal, they can go different places, in other words, and different times. She was radiating very, very thin signals, tiny little signals, but very, very narrow, out of her head in about 4 different places. Again, this needs properly researched, but the point is, this has been done. She's already had this detected in 2010. So how much of a setup is the AMASH project? How much of a setup to release this information has this actually been? And why should Marie suddenly discover this data the day before the Channel 4 program, which would surely have shown quite clearly on air that she wasn't the head case that they made her out to be, but they had this thing in her eye. Now the point is, at the Super Soldier Summit, one of the most prominent speakers was a guy called Robert Duncan, and this is volume 2 of his Project Soul Catcher book. Remember earlier I mentioned the British Telecom Soul Catcher program, and here it is. This is the book, volume 2. And this goes under the nice title of Robert Duncan and the Mind Hacking Strategy Group. They are after the energy signature and thought control of every single living mind on the planet. Everything. They don't need the implants anymore. We have to really get ourselves ahead of the game here. That's Dave Marrow, and he's just been in contact with me literally the other day, literally yesterday, I think I mentioned earlier. He mentioned Dr. Green. Anybody who studies MK Ultra, the Monarch type programs in this country, are aware of a guy called Dr. Green. Dr. Green is Mengele from the Nazi time. He still seems to be useful and very active. So one of the things about these things is that these Nazis have a careless habit of dying several times. Kamler died 3 times, very careless. So really, where are they going? Where are they soul jumping to? Anyway, that's it. That's the basic summary of the BASIS project. There's lots of stuff I've left out, but hope that's given you something to think about. The point is that we can do something about this. We are active ourselves, our own minds. You can reject this stuff. Solaris Blue Raven and another person who talked to me here was able to get over this stuff. So you have the power to stop this. You've got the power to let us live in a wonderful, creative, and fantastic, brilliant world, and maybe do that. That's our emails there. That's it. I can answer very quickly. The one on the left. Yeah, you're on the left, aren't you?
Yeah. Miles, on one of your slides, computer compressed pictures, you mentioned in connection with the Bentwaters incident that somebody called Randalls had tried to interfere, or I forget the exact word, with the investigation. I've been involved following this story right from the very beginning. And I've been to many lectures on the subject by Jenny Randalls, and I've read her book. And I'm curious to know why you say that.
Basically, Brenda Butler's data was basically taken over. Brenda Butler and Dot Street's original research was essentially hijacked by Jenny Randles. The book was then taken to the MOD. The MOD then approved the book, and then Jenny Randles published it with her name on it. There was also Brenda Butler and Dot Street in there, but there was stuff taken out of that book. In other words, the history of vent orders from the English point of view was published by Jenny Randles, but it was published with an MOD stamp of approval and censorship on it.
Well, yes, that may be so, but she was the lead V4 investigator.
She was the lead V4 investigator, but the point is that Brenda Butler's work has essentially been pushed constantly to the background, and the interviews that I've done with her and the basis edit that I've had in the can, some of it for almost 10 years, I still can't get my head together to finish it. It's something I just can't do it, because that's the problem. There's something trying to sit on what's really going on there. And I did interview Colonel John B. Alexander about this, and he very briefly expressed that the whole Rendlesham Forest thing goes back much further, it's a much bigger thing, and that in terms of strangeness, or as he called it, too hot to handle, is way up there. And Brenda's work, I think, is being constantly sidelined and put out of the way, and I think from her perspective, she needs proper recognition. Because a lot of these other people are parachuted in, Nick Pope and every other Tom, Dick and Harry, come in.
Before, like everybody else, is subject to the law, and if they're going to publish a book on a very contentious incident that occurred highly secret base, they would almost automatically put it to the MOD as people writing.
The problem is all this stuff is outside the base.
Pardon?
All this stuff's outside the base, it's not an MOD land. I mean, for instance, the landing zones that everybody's going to are 90 degrees off from where the radiation and the alleged landings happen. Again, I'm not saying any alien activity happened there, but I'm saying that Brenda Butler's personal research with her colleague should have been published on their own. If Brenda Butler was going to send it to the MOD for censorship, then it should have been published under her name, as released and approved by the MOD. That would have been honest. But essentially, Jenny Randles used that and hijacked it, in my opinion.
Well, you were talking to your opinion.
Yeah, well, then let's say that let's say that the Sky Crash
I do the
book.
same thing. Miles is correct. I do the same thing. I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Canal.
I mean, I'm not saying that Jenny Randles is a bad researcher. I'm saying that essentially that happens with a lot of these things in the scientific domain, is that somebody else walks in and takes somebody else's work, gets credit for it, and keeps the interesting stuff down.
Right.
And I think there's an awful lot more work there that needs to be done. And one of these days you're going to finish Basis 3, and it's going to be called the Butler Report, and it's going to be giving Brenda Butler the credit she deserves, as well as I can possibly put it together. Any other? I mean, your question is entirely valid, but then let's make it MOD, approved by the MOD, and then you know where it's coming from. Now, there's a whole chapter's been taken out. Okay?
Yeah, hi Miles, Barry.
Oh, Barry.
Yeah.
This is Barry sitting here.
Years ago, I don't know if you remember at Liverpool Street, we used to have this conspiracy group meeting there, you gave me a DVD.
Sorry, there was no conspiracy. Move on.
Anyway, you gave me the DVD, and obviously it contained that coloured guy,
Dave Marrow.
yeah, and Chris Thomas, who has access to the Akashic records. Well, for me, that was a DVD. For me, it confirmed to me that I thought, because at the time I thought I was the only one who experienced being attacked by this dark consciousness. I don't know if it's the black. I don't think it's the black guru. I thought it would be, but it's not. And what happened to me was I had to go inside a haunted house that had spirits and demons in it. Came out on a sunny day, freezing. And I hadn't protected myself. I realised later that I was going over an energy centre, chakra, inside the house. And when I got back to my place, with the young lady that used to live in that house, I ended up on the floor thinking I was dying. I couldn't work out what it was until the young lady I thought she was psychic, and her angel came on the scene, and she told her that I was attacked by, they took advantage of me. The Greys shot a kind of a dark.
Yeah, I think we've got to understand here that we're messing around with things we don't understand.
No, but
You've
your
got to be-
DVD confirmed for me that it happened, and that I thought I was the only one. I'm not trying to build something up here, but your DVD helped me come to terms with it a bit more. That's all.
I think the most important thing there is that you have the power of your own integrity.
I agree.
And we're dealing with not, this is one of the biggest destructive distractions about this whole subject is, we're all told there's ETs out there somewhere, one planet far, far away. Let's just concentrate on the light we've got here, in whatever dimensional structure or life field that we've got sitting on Earth, or whatever we call this place, this matrix, or whatever you want to discuss it or think about it as. Let's get this place sorted out first, before we think we're going to go out into the stars. Because one of the other people that we interviewed, again, that was the lovely Joanne was there in Prague. We got an interview with Ava Zemanova, who I believe Kerry's also met, was a friend from she talks very quietly, there's very difficulty here, she doesn't speak very much. But anyway, the point is that she is remembering, or had a direct experience, where she remembers where life first came to this earth, corporeal, flesh and blood life. And another colleague of mine, a dear friend called Anna Hess, she's had similar experiences. And then other people have had similar memories, where it seems, according to Irwin's database that he was told about, is that the races, the various races on Earth, have all been seeded here progressively over periods of time. And what Ava Zemanova, I think she described very well, was how we live, or the Earth is in a very dense space-time, or what she calls time-space field. And there are a number or series of these fields which have very complicated, convoluting implications. And the idea that you can just go straight up there is not quite as easy as it seems. It seems you need a much more complicated convolution of a series of ways of jumping out of this very dense space-time field. So anyway, the life of the universe and everything is a lot more complicated. So, but I think we have to think about here first. Anybody else? Well, thanks for buying the DVD. We haven't made any in 2 years, but we'll have to get some more made up. Maybe a box set or something, and sell it at an exorbitantly profitable price.
You put up something earlier about through the Looking Glass project.
Yes, that was. Sorry, I had to cut him off because that's just not enough time.
Yeah, I'm aware that it was going on a lot before 2012. I was just wondering if that's still an ongoing process, or if that's ceased to exist.
Looking Glass keeps coming up time and time again, and I think it's a bit like Project Bluebeam. Project Bluebeam's got so many things attached to it. I'm not sure exactly what Project Looking Glass is, but it does seem to include, based on some of the people that contacted me way back in '93, that it is some kind of psi mind travel thing. In other words, consciousness through different dimensions or realities into different domains. And it, again, the name of the project suggests what it's actually doing. Mirrors, some people believe mirrors are very dangerous. They can be used as portals. Again, you know, there's a lot of complicated things in this, so I don't know if it's still continuing, but based on the Uri Geller program, I would say it's been not only continuing, but ramped up, and it would appear that those, let's put it this way, they're taking the people, so-called retired individuals, back into service on this.
I understood that there was like a range of different possible timelines. Do you think that they could have possibly, that could have changed after 2012, after, let's say, certain things didn't take place, whether it be the corruption or...
Something which somebody contacted me at a recent gathering was that it seems that the solar system If you can imagine the solar system is like the head of a comet. And essentially the sun is at the tip of that comet. And up until now we've been floating around with things like an album, like a disc, right? Like a linear disc. But what's happened is, because everything's spinning and moving and moving and spinning and spinning and moving, right? What's happening is that we have encountered something denser, or something which provides resistance to that. So instead of the solar system being a linear disk where all the planets flying around it, and everybody in linear time and all that sort of stuff, there's a sufficient amount of distortion now beginning to we're entering a sort of a distortion field, which is going to, or is, changing the density of space-time in our environment. For instance, if you look at a comet, it's got lots of dense matter flowing and fluttering off it, and it's got a tail. The point about that is, if you look at space-time, everybody feels space-time is a linear, flat disk. It's nice and linear, it's nice and tidy. But if you could imagine a choppy sea, and then translate that into a hurricane, a twister, a spiral, where everything's very heavily distorted and changing and spiraling and moving, you might get a better representation as to how we're actually now beginning to enter a very complex space-time field, which means you're going to be going through lots of zones where, gosh, that happened quickly, or gosh, that took a long time, or distances don't seem to be the same, or they're the same linear distance, but it takes longer to go through them. So maybe that's what that means. That's the way I was asked to describe it. Anything else? In other words, we live in a complicated world. That's why I refer detrimentally to these people who want to put human consciousness into a robot, cyborg, microchip. I call them the flat earthers. I call them flat earthers. They've got as much consciousness as a flat earth believer in the old days. All right. I think it's time to go to the pub.